Walk into a bank with $400 to your name, and they will nickel and dime you into the ground. Walk in with 100 grand, and suddenly someone is offering you coffee and calling you by your first name. Same bank, same week. Let's meet Seth and Francine. They are the same age, work the same job, and get the exact same paycheck direct deposited into the exact same checking account. The only difference between them is the number sitting in their savings. Seth gets the overdraft notices. He gets the polite letter saying, "We regret to inform you." Francine? Francine gets handed a business card from a human being who calls himself her relationship manager. And there's a very specific reason for that, and it is not good customer service. Hold on to that thought, because it's the ultimate tale of the banking industry. Here's the part nobody says out loud. The bank isn't warm to Francine because she's wealthy. They are warm to her because, financially speaking, she is dangerous. Somewhere on her way to saving that first $100,000, Francine crossed a mathematical line. That line flipped her from being the most profitable customer a bank can possibly have into their absolute worst nightmare. Once you see exactly where that line sits, you will never look at your own bank account the same way again. Before any of this makes sense, you have to understand one fundamental rule of money. In finance, there is no neutral. Every dollar you have is either earning interest for you or costing you interest. There's no in between. Your money is never just parked or resting. You are always on one side of the ledger or the other. And sadly, most people spend their entire adult lives on the wrong side. They are doing what I call renting money.
When you rent money, you pay to borrow it, you pay to hold it, and you pay a penalty fee when you run out of it. It's a rental agreement where you never actually own anything. Let me give you the single most damning statistic in all of consumer banking. This comes straight from government regulators. Roughly 9% of checking accounts generate nearly 80% of all overdraft fees. Read that again. 9% of customers pay almost 80% of the penalties. That isn't a glitch, and it isn't bad luck. That is the concrete foundation the entire banking industry is built on. Free checking for the comfortable majority is quietly subsidized by the people living closest to zero. Before regulators started cracking down, the banking industry was pulling in over $15 billion a year just on overdraft and insufficient funds fees. $15 billion, charged $35 at a time to people who were short by $35. Picture a $4 oat milk latte that trips a $35 overdraft fee. That is officially the most expensive coffee in recorded human history, and somebody, somewhere, buys a version of it every single day. But fees are just the loud, obvious half of the machine. The quiet half is called the spread, and it runs on you, too. You hand the bank your money. The national average they pay you to hold it in a standard savings is practically zero, maybe around 0.4%. On $1,000, that's $4 a year. That's enough to buy one coffee, the non-overdraft kind. Then, the bank turns around and lends your exact same money back out into the world. They lend it out as a mortgage at 7%, a car loan at 9%, or a credit card at 22%. The gap between the pennies they pay you and the massive interest they charge everyone else is called the net interest margin. Your deposit isn't sitting in a vault with your name on it. Your deposit is their raw material. Let's put a real number on it. Hand a bank $100,000, and they might pay you $400 a year to keep it there. Then, they lend your $100,000 to someone else to buy a house or fund a business, and they earn $7,000 or more in interest. You got $400. They got $7,000, and it was your money the whole time. This brings us back to Seth and Francine. Seth is the perfect customer. He has $400, he occasionally overdrafts, he never hits the minimum balance to get his monthly account fee waived. Every swipe of his debit card makes the bank money. In the cold, hard math of Wall Street, Seth is highly profitable.
Francine. Francine keeps her balance high enough that she never triggers a fee. She moves her excess cash to high-yield accounts so the bank loses that cheap spread. From the bank's point of view, Francine is overhead. The entire consumer banking model relies on having millions of Seths to pay for the Francines. So how do you stop being a Seth and become a Francine? The answer is a specific number, and it's right around $85,700. Let me show you the math. Let's say you invest $500 a month and earn a steady 7% a year, roughly what the stock market returns historically after inflation. $500 a month is $6,000 a year. That is money going in by hand through your own grit and discipline. You are the engine pushing the car up the hill. But watch what your money does on its own. At a 7% return, the moment your investment balance crosses $85,700, the interest it throws off in a single year is just over $6,000. Do you see what just happened? The return on your money just became larger than everything you contributed by hand that year. Sit with that for a second. Below that line, you are pushing the car. Above that line, the car is rolling on its own and you are just steering. Your money has quietly gotten a full-time job. It clocks in every morning, doesn't take lunch breaks, and out-earns your entire savings habit while you are asleep. It never asks for a raise, it never calls in sick. That is the silent raise nobody warned you was coming. A raise your boss didn't approve and can't take away. $85,700 sits right at the doorstep of six figures. This is exactly why old-school billionaires obsess over that $100,000 milestone. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's legendary late business partner, famously said, "The first $100,000 is a bitch, but you gotta do it." People love quoting that, but nobody explains why it's true. Here's the math. If you save $500 a month at a 7% return, getting from $0 to $100,000 takes about 11.5 years. It is grueling. It is slow. This is the exact stretch where people like Seth check their balance, see a number that's barely moved in 3 years, decide the game is rigged, and just give up. But watch what happens to the people who refuse to quit. Getting from $100,000 to $200,000, saving the exact same $500 a month at the exact same 7% takes only 6.5 years. You make the exact same 100K climb in nearly half the time. And it keeps accelerating. The first 10% of your journey to $1 million eats up almost 30% of the total time. The hill is steepest at the very bottom, which is exactly where everyone is standing, exhausted, convinced that saving money doesn't work. Once you have that $100,000, the physics of wealth take over. If you never added another single dollar to that account and just let it sit at 7%, it would double to $200,000 in 10 years. Leave it for 30 years and it turns into $750,000. The hard work is entirely front-loaded. Once the snowball exists, your only job is to not stand in front of it. Now, let's put real life on top of these numbers, because this is where the math stops being abstract and starts being something you can feel in your chest. Seth carries a credit card balance. The average American carries about $6,300 in credit card debt at an average rate of 22%. So Seth pays roughly $1,386 a year in interest for nothing. He doesn't get a vacation or a new TV out of that. He pays almost $1,400 a year just to rent money he already spent. Francine, meanwhile, has her $100,000 sitting safely in a high-yield account, earning 4.5%. That's $4,500 a year landing in her checking account while she sleeps. Look at the same person, separated only by which side of the line they stand on. On one side, minus $1,400 a year. On the other, positive $4,500. The lifestyle swing between those two realities is almost $6,000 a year. And here is the ultimate secret. What changes at $100,000 isn't just the balance in your account. It's what that balance does to your brain. When you have a cushion, you stop making choices from a position of fear. You don't take a toxic job just because you desperately need a check next Friday. You don't sign a terrible 9% car loan because your old car broke down and you have no other option. Scarcity makes you small, fast, and easy to take advantage of. A financial cushion makes you slow, patient, and impossible to corner. Every predatory financial product ever invented, from payday loans to 25% credit cards, runs on one single fuel: your inability to wait.
The consumer finance system isn't run by cartoon villains twirling their mustaches. It's actually worse. It is simply a highly optimized machine built around a customer who lives paycheck to paycheck, carries a balance, and occasionally runs short. That customer is the product. So when people ask why banks fear someone with $100,000 saved, this is the honest answer. They don't fear you like a monster. They fear you the way a Vegas casino fears the guy who stands up from the blackjack table and cashes out his chips while he's ahead. You didn't beat the house. You just stopped playing their game. And a player who refuses to play is the one thing their entire business model has no answer for. That is the real reason $100,000 isn't just a milestone. It's the door out of the room. The first $100,000 is the hardest money you will ever make in your life. The last $1 million is the easiest. So stop renting money. Start owning it. Be stubborn through the slow years. Refuse to quit when the math feels impossible, and let the bank lose a little sleep over you for once. If this video changed the way you look at your bank account, hit the subscribe button. We talk about the real rules of money every single week. Thanks for watching, and go cross that line.